Hello and welcome to The Big Picture. In what is seen as an historic decision which will shape the future of digital and internet ecosystem, the Telecom Regulatory Authority of India, TRAI, has barred differential pricing for data on internet services. This decision has effectively curtailed the plans of Facebook and operators like Reliance Jio to roll out its free basic services across India. The decision comes after one of the most extensive consultations in public sphere witnessed in India ever. Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg has understandably expressed disappointment. It may be recalled that Facebook had launched a very expensive ad campaign across the Indian media space rooting for the free basic services, arguing that it would give access to millions who can't afford access and also lift people out of poverty, create millions of jobs and spread education opportunities. However, TRAI, while rejecting all these arguments and upholding the cause of net neutrality, has also warned violators of steep penalties amounting up to Rs 50 lakhs. What does this decision of TRAI mean in the long term? How will it impact the ordinary consumers and empower them? What impact will this have on operators and data service providers as well as Facebook and similar companies? And most importantly, has TRAI spoken the last word on the issue of net neutrality? We will discuss all this today with Pavan Duggal, senior advocate and cyber law expert, T.V.Ramachandran, former Director General, Cellular Operators Association of India, Raman Singh, Chima, Global Policy Director, Access, and Smriti Parsheera, legal consultant at the National Institute of Public Finance and Policy. Welcome to all of you. Mr. Ramachandran, are you disappointed?
Yes, indeed. As you say, it's a historic decision yesterday. I would say that yes, it's a very positive one for the startup and contemporary players. But I am not very sure that it is good for the consumers of India who are not connected. And that's our worry. I represent, in fact, I would like to correct you. I'm not here as a former DG of COI. I don't represent any operator. I don't represent Facebook. I don't represent any. I represent the Broadband Forum of India. So I represent the broadband ecosystem. And in this forum,
but
our greatest concern...
You have been the Director General of
yeah, I have been.
Cellular Operators. So you know that you can talk from that point of view also.
Sure, I can. But what I'm saying is, my current priority is to see ways and means of helping to improve the broadband penetration in this country, which is abysmally low. We are 142 out of a list of 166 countries, nothing to make us proud about. And this decision, I believe, is going to go against any early improvement in that position.
In increasing the penetration.
Yeah, because the earlier zero rating and whatever you call it, internet.org or free basics, what it did was to give at least some of the internet to those who have zero internet.
But we have not experienced it in India.
Yeah, Facebook, it started for a limited way and it was stopped by the regulator. Okay, that is fine. See, until the TRAI consultations are over, I fully support TRAI that nothing hasty should be done until the consultations are over. That's fine.
But what I'm saying now that the decision is taken.
Decision is, I think, not good for the Indian consumer who is not connected. All evidence, I've examined a lot of economics researchers. Researchers have shown there are enough, like people like Diana Carew, so many I can mention, who have shown that products like internet.org or zero rating are very good. In many countries they have helped. And even in the FCC, you should note that that is a mecca of all this net neutrality and all that. Even in the FCC, the regulator has said he is not barred the zero rating. He said, I will examine it on a case-by-case basis. So I think the decision here is not really, I'm somewhat disappointed.
Okay, you are saying that essentially it helps the startups, it doesn't help the consumers.
Yeah, who are a billion in number, who are not connected.
Okay, Pavan, how do you look at it? Mr. Ramachandran has a very clear point on this. He thinks that this only helps certain startups, that's all.
Well, I see this particular regulation as a distinct watershed in the history of evolution of net neutrality jurisprudence in India. For the very simple reason, I think these regulations are crystal clear. They want to ensure ultimately that the rights and the concerned positions of those teeming Indians who have not yet come onto the digital bandwagon that should not be compromised in any manner whatsoever. And that's the reason why these regulations have said, well, complete prohibition on discriminatory pricing for a period of 2 years. Well, why these 2 years? Because in 2 years, the Indian ecosystem is going to be far more mature. Right now, the government has a sovereign role to play to ensure that the rights of these teeming millions who have not yet come onto the internet, who are not yet capable of understanding the nuances and legalities pertaining to the fine print on the terms and conditions of use, they should be spared of the entire prospect of mortgaging their rights. Ultimately, let's face it, there is no free lunch across the world, and consequently, whenever this so-called free pricing or discriminatory pricing is going to be offered, it's all going to be ultimately encouraged or shall I say founded on the entire data economy. It's the data and the metadata of the users who are not yet understanding the nuances of what these so-called free lunches are. That's what's going to be at stake. So I think it's a good step. It's, shall I say, a game-changing step. But at the same time, the regulator needs to be appreciated that it said, I have not put my decisions in stone. I'm going to give it for 2 years. I've also allowed, these regulations have allowed for certain exemption in the context of certain public emergencies, if that may be the case, in terms of national emergencies. But by and large, this 50,000 rupee per day fine, I still believe is relatively very less. It should have been far more. However, the meat of the pudding lies in its eating. So it will have to be seen how will these be effectively implemented in the coming times.
Okay. Smriti, what were the issues before the TRAI when it finally came to this decision? Because as he says, was it only about, was it between startups versus, established players like Facebook? Was that what the TRAI faced?
So the mandate of TRAI, if you see it, is one, to preserve the internet as a whole, to preserve the sector and to promote the growth of the sector. Second is to preserve the interests of the consumer. So I would disagree with the view that this is not a pro-consumer move, because if you see what is the internet as a whole is a network where the value of the network is determined by how many users are on it. And I say this about the internet as a whole, not about a walled garden within the internet where there might be 5 or 10 websites. Increasing a user base of this smaller group of websites within the internet does not increase the welfare of consumers as a whole, because then you are isolating consumers, creating multiple walled gardens. So what this order has done is just cut that possibility by saying that, there will be one internet. We are here to stand for the openness of the internet. And in that sense, I would say it's a very pro-consumer move. The other thing I would say is that a lot of people would argue that, consumers were getting something for free and now you've taken that away. So you've taken basically a benefit which was being given to consumers. But I would again disagree with that, because if you look at this from the perspective of what is the market failure here, one, there is a lot of information asymmetry between consumers and TSPs, because consumers don't know what they're signing up for. You're talking about consumers who are completely unconnected, who don't even know what the internet is. So firstly, if you give them 10 websites, there is no saying that they won't believe that this is the internet.
Essentially, they would have come to believe that Facebook is internet.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Just like Godrej is
absolutely, because
like it becomes the that's what that is one of the dangers.
There's no evidence to that effect.
No, there is evidence. Godrej is an evidence.
In fact, we've got evidence to the contrary, that tasting a bit of the internet. I'm very fond. Please don't mistake me. I'm tiresomely repetitive. I like to quote Marie Antoinette, French Revolution. If they don't have bread, let them eat cakes. People don't have bread. They don't have the normal internet access. And you're denying them that.
No, you are saying that normal internet access means
something to start
limited
with.
access.
Yeah, a cake is a full.
You give them only limited access. But now they're going to get unlimited access. How
will you give it? Show me where the unlimited. I'll take it today itself. It's not there.
Because see, even if you see these studies which people like Facebook are quoting, they basically quote their own internal studies saying that they've tested in Africa where consumers will convert to the open internet. But if you talk about it, what is, they're using becoming a Facebook subscriber as a proxy for converting into the internet, which is exactly the whole problem that we want to guard against.
I can quote you many studies by economics experts, professors of economics, like Diane Carew, which show very clearly that zero rating has helped promote this. It's not a company. She's an independent academic.
Okay.
I can quote that.
Ramanjit?
I always love it when independent academics are quoted because they tend not to be independent.
Yeah. No, but that apart from that, the question is about now the question is, has the issue of differential prices been settled for good? And Pavan says it's only for 2 years, which means after 2 years this whole issue will come again for discussion.
I think there are two elements here, and I think Pavan rightfully pointed out, look, it's for 2 years. The reason I think behind that is, again, saying TRAI realizes this is an initial step. It wants to test it.
One second. Mr. Ramachandran, it's for 2 years. You can wait for 2 years.
I don't know if India can wait. You think we are already behind even our neighboring countries like Sri Lanka and Bhutan in net penetration, in broadband penetration.
Okay.
As per the ITU, not my index, as per the World ITU Geneva Index, we are below all of them. We are below 17 countries in Africa. Nothing to be proud about. Do you think we can wait for 2 years?
I think it's interesting that even 2 years ago, neither Mr. Ramachandran nor any of his colleagues in the telecom industry said zero rating helped internet access. They were all asking for better regulations to make investment better. They were saying government must help in fiber. They were helping in new technologies. And I think that's the point. It's very interesting that just in 1 year, certain large telecom companies and some of their partners have said zero rating is the panacea of internet access. It solves everything. Till date, I have not seen a single study. In fact, that is from an independent expert, not funded or supported by people who have said zero rating conclusively helps in internet access. In fact, on the contrary, we have had the World Wide Web Foundation. We've had groups like people like Mr. Tim Berners-Lee, who founded the World Wide Web, say that, by the way, we support internet access. We don't think zero rating helps grow infrastructure. So I think that's the point. And the 2 years you mentioned is important. It's 2 years to test these regulations, to fine-tune it, to make them better. I think Pavan made it a more important point. It depends on enforcement.
What is he trying to say? 2 years to test these regulations.
To test and improve them. So TRAI could be told.
After that, what happens after 2 years?
After 2 years, the TRAI is supposed to do a review. It's supposed to review how it's worked.
Right.
We could make it better. We could improve it. And even in those 2 years, as you know, we still don't have comprehensive net neutrality rules on other things, like blocking, filtering, or throttling.
No, that's exactly the point.
Beg your pardon, this is not a net neutrality discussion. This is only pricing.
This is a differential prices.
Yeah,
pricing
net neutrality has not been addressed.
Yes, and that's what I'm just saying.
Yeah, there's only a very small element in that.
An important one. It's not been settled. And for 2 years, we're going to test it out. More importantly, it's an enforcement. I think Pavan said the test is about how you actually do it. We must now see whether TRAI enforces this, whether telcos follow this, because telcos have not been following many of these rules. And we need to see how consumers are actually protected. So besides the 2 years, I'm interested in 2 months. How is this going to work? How will TRAI be enforcing it? Will people be trying to use loopholes by using some of the things like closed electronic communication services?
Which has been allowed.
Which has been allowed.
Yes.
But TRAI said that this should not be meant to help circumvent these rules.
Right.
But again, TRAI has to enforce it, or we have to bring these actions to TRAI. And that is the test. Will these loopholes be used or not?
TRAI has been brilliant in the wording, if I may say so. They have indicated that anything which is consumer-centric should go on. And that's what I agree with Chima, that we should see how it's implemented. Anything that benefits the consumer. I'm not interested in wannabe Facebook or wannabe Google garage operator startups benefiting. There are 6,000-7,000 of them maybe. They don't represent the unconnected, the people who don't have broadband.
But they also form a very important...
They are very important. I'm not belittling them. But
as far as net neutrality is concerned, as far as...
You give enough benefits to them, but don't deny access. I'm saying
okay.
That's what I'm...
Okay, but coming to the question of, this is just one part of the net neutrality debate. What are the other parts? What are the other issues which needs to be tackled and discussed?
See, there is the regulation, if you have read it, I think it's a 15-page document. It's a very complex thing. We need to understand it critically because, like Chima rightly said, how it's going to be enforced, how it's going to be interpreted. Everybody could have a different interpretation, though I think they have worded it pretty well. But everybody is not a telecom expert or a ICT expert. So we need to see how it is played out in the course of days. And number two, this is only a small element. Overall net neutrality has not even been defined in most countries in the world, in India particularly. And every country has its own customized definition of net neutrality to suit its country's interests. And that's what we need to wait for. That's consultation which is in progress.
Yes, Pavan.
Well, I wanted to highlight a couple of issues as we go forward in this regard. The first is that India has to be consciously clear that digital colonization does not take place. And some of these, shall I say, differential pricing or free pricing projects are nothing but attempts to create digital colonies. It's taken India so many centuries to come out of the British rule. It will be very, very sad if we are going to give away the cusp of opportunity at the time of history and engage in digital colonies. Second important thing, the most important stuff is that India needs to not replicate by cut and pasting the approach that's existing either in America or in Scandinavia or in Europe. The Indian approach has to be completely different, has to be customized, holistic. And most significant amongst all those central points is the fact that India's sovereignty, security, and integrity in sovereign areas, in cyberspace, needs to be protected. And therefore, I think that's one area that a lot of people are not talking about.
Okay.
It's important as we go forward towards net neutrality, when India is such a huge mobile web, when more than 80% of the people are accessing the internet through mobile devices, it's imperative that India's sovereign interests must be protected. And in that regard, I believe the 2016 regulations of TRAI do represent a step forward.
Okay, Smriti, this whole free internet or basic services, what is called free basics, was it only aimed at developing countries? Because you should see the Facebook what the Facebook says, they're talking only about developing economies, how they were trying to help the developing countries come out of this and have more penetration and things like that. What about developed countries?
What I would say to that is it's aimed at where they think they could get away with it. So it's aimed at a lot of countries in Latin America, a lot of countries in Africa, countries in Asia, where they think that the countries are not yet thinking about net neutrality, are not yet thinking about zero rating issues. And it's easier to launch there. And, with these network kind of industries, once you've acquired a certain scale, like, if 5 years later, if Free Basics was launched in India today, by 5 years, it would have so many consumers and such a large consumer base. Politically, it would have become such a difficult thing to roll back on that, even though studies would have shown by then that there is actual damage to consumers and to user groups and to the internet as a whole. So in that sense, yes, there is a targeting of countries which are relatively underdeveloped. Just another point I'd like to make on the 2 years thing that we were discussing is that the 2 years is actually a period which it says TRAI may assess in 2 years or may assess at any point before that. So we shouldn't fear that, this is now the position for 2 years if TRAI believes in...
But what about Mr. Ramachandran's argument that 2 years we are going to lose time, the penetration which would have happened in those 2 years, we are going to lose that. We are going to have more, a lot of people still not covered by this.
So I think the concern with that is seeing, a free basic sort of design as like the solution to all our problems on accessibility. As you would see, even the TRAI response talks about it. But if you go through the consultation responses which came in, there is a really rich source of examples about how you can improve access. One is, of course, the Universal Service Obligation Fund, which the government has. They could use that to give a certain amount of X data free to every citizen in the country. So that is one option which is anyway available. A lot of private players have alternate plans which give free data to consumers, but it's not creating walled garden. So if you give 250 MB of data free to every user to access the open internet, there are ways to increase accessibility without creating this kind of...
And that is being addressed? You think that
is being addressed? That remains open. There is nothing in the regulation which stops you from giving unlimited free access to the open internet. They clearly say that that is not something which is going to be barred by these regulations.
Okay, Ramanjit. Now, what are the other issues of net neutrality which needs to be tackled in the coming days?
No, I think that one thing is clear, and you see that this is one part of the entire package. So back in July and August of this year, or rather the previous year, the Department of Telecom came out with a group of expert recommendations talking about net neutrality. As you may remember, the minister had promised in the floor of the Rajya Sabha that in fact the government would take this forward and they would take forward comprehensive net neutrality protection, practically an Internet Bill of Rights, to use some of the words of ruling party MPs in the House. They laid out a list of recommendations. One part was that zero rating, this subject should be taken up by the telecom regulator, which the telecom regulator under Chairman R. Sharma has now completed. The larger part of having net neutrality rules which protect against throttling, blocking, filtering, or paid prioritization,
or
slowing down as well, needs to be also done. Now, I would say, and I think the Department of Telecom has said that, by the way, this already is covered partly by the telecom licenses, but not enough. They said there are many models possible. We can amend the telecom licenses, TRAI could do more, but that needs to happen. Now that this element is complete, That stage needs to go forward next, and that, I think, is what we're waiting for. Because I think I'd flagged that this was one form of abusive behavior the telecom regulator recognized, discriminatory pricing. But actual immediate discrimination on content is happening in India right now, and the tools aren't clear enough. Even if you remember just a year ago, a couple of months ago, you had one major telecom operator say, we will stop access to VoIP services because we can do so. There's nothing stopping us there. People told them, no, there are regulations, but they said, they actually basically said, they're not strong enough. So I think that part needs to be completed by the government now. That's to the DOT, which has recommendations. They're not yet acted upon. And what the minister promised Parliament, where he said, we will come back to you, we will run you through what we're doing, we will take your blessings, or we will bring legislation. That now needs to happen.
Pavan, what about this? What about these issues? The legislations, are they on track?
Well, the legislation issues are completely not on track. In fact, as a nation, we appear to be a nation which is lost in the woods vis-a-vis legislative approaches. Well, we only have one law in our country which impacts the electronic format, as also use of computers, computer systems and communication devices, and that's the Information Technology Act 2000. Now, logically so, that has already become the mother legislation for everything digital. If at all we need to do something vis-a-vis the electronic format, the issues pertaining to neutrality or otherwise of networks have to be addressed in that particular legislation. But we have not seen an amendment to that after 2008. And even the 2011 rules that the central government notified did not really go in that particular direction. So I think there's a lot of need for internal thought process, internal homework being done. The government needs to come up with legislative approaches. At the end of the day, mind you, these are regulations only being done up by a regulator. But at the same time, this is only at best a secondary legislation, but a primary legislation which elaborately determines and defines the holistic approach of the nation towards these issues, I think needs to distinctly be brought forward. So I think eyes are now going to be on the government on how they would want to come up to address this legal policy and regulatory issues.
Pavan, so are you saying that this decision of the TRAI as far as differential pricing is concerned and other issues which you people have all spoken about are all these are all things which should be backed by legislations? Even the differential pricing you think should be backed by legislation?
No.
Absolutely. See, absolutely. At the end of the day, you would require the teeming Indian consumers who are completely helpless, who do not even have the ability to understand the nuances of these technical fine print in legalese in the terms and conditions. Those rights need to be protected. Now, who is going to protect that? It's the sovereign government. How does the sovereign government protect it? By coming up with in place detailed legal frameworks, legislative mechanisms, and there should be now, I should say, legislative approaches which will give effective redress mechanisms available to those people who are affected. Now, this, for example, let's take these 2016 regulations. Well, they are good, but it's a 50,000 rupees fine per day. Who will implement? How will implement?
Right.
Those are bigger issues.
Right. Yes, Mr. Ramachandran. So you don't think that it needs a legislative backing?
On this aspect of data pricing, I've got 2-3 comments. On data pricing, the TRAI is fully empowered. They have they are not making recommendations. They have made a regulation which is secondary legislation. So it is enforceable by law. I don't need a fresh law for that. Of course, constitutional right, anybody can appeal against anything. That's the right of the citizens of the country. But TRAI is fully empowered. Secondly, net neutrality aspects which impinge on license conditions. Licenses have been issued by the sovereign power licensor, and so the license conditions have to reflect. The licensor has to take a view.
So you're saying that there are certain things which can impinge on the license conditions?
Exactly. His performance, it's in effect a contract which the licensee had come in. So if you're introducing something, it has to be bilaterally agreed. You can't unilaterally. It can't
be a unilateral thing.
And that needs discussion. Net neutrality discussions mean that. They have heard that. And when you come to signing the license, amendments for enforcing whatever we want to agree to, that will need a
between the government and the
operator and the licensees
and the operator and the licensee.
You need to have agreement. So you can't just
Raman, you have
I just want to point out that the licenses aren't the point, isn't that they're agreements. The licenses are issued under the Telegraph Act, ultimately under authority of Parliament and under
But do you agree? He says that there may be certain conditions in the agreement which, with this net neutrality thing can come in the way of that.
No, I don't think there are issues there. In fact, the agreements already speak about the idea that you're not supposed to discriminate. I think what the DOT report said, and I urge people to read it, is a very powerfully written document, and which the Prime Minister himself put up for consultation on mygov.in. What that document said was that they already is meant to be protected. We need to make it clearer. To make it clearer, we can amend the license conditions. And as you are well aware, license amendments are a process the government itself can do. People can challenge it. Telcos are always, and telecom companies are always welcome to go to the courts of the land to challenge it. But the act of changing the license is subject to the licensor, which is the government of India, which again does this in trust. They do it in public trust for the people of this country and under the authority of the Telegraph Act. People forget the licenses are ultimately subordinate to what the Supreme Court said back in 1996. So it said the government does not own spectrum. The government holds steward on spectrum the people of this country. And that's a very important statement. And by the way, if you see the TRAI order, the memorandum, it actually calls that out. It says TRAI is forced to do this. The government also needs to do this. So I just
pardon, Ramanji, the same Supreme Court last year or year before last in the AGR case has said very clearly that licenses cannot be changed unilaterally.
It cannot be changed.
Why?
No, I'm sure I'm sure that there's going to be discussions on this. It won't be done unilaterally. Smriti, what is the impact of this order of the TRAI internationally, globally?
I mean, if we look at international comparisons, what India has done is actually very pioneering in the sense that, other countries which have ruled against zero rating products have done so after adopting a net neutrality law and saying that this is in violation of our net neutrality law. What India has done is taken the bull by its horns and saying that this last thing, which is a grey area for some say we'll handle it on case by case basis, some say, we completely prohibit it. That grey area we have banned. So, I mean, it only logically follows that practices like throttling, practices like reducing speed as well as blocking, those things will not be allowed once the net neutrality, I mean, we don't know how that law will be shaped, but when that law comes about, it will go in a way, it is expected that you can't be allowing that kind of practices once you have said that zero rating itself is not allowed. So I think in that sense, India stands out from any other example globally.
Okay. Mr. Ramachandran?
Yeah, my one last point.
Yes, last point, and also how is this going to affect the operators if it's going to affect at all?
I don't want to think about operators because I don't represent the operators.
No,
what I'm saying is, I'm saying consumer.
I'm sure you know how it will affect.
I know it's going to have a huge effect on operators. That's a different thing. I'll come to that. But my direct worry is about consumer. Anything, like Smriti said, anything which protects the consumer is good, and we will stand for that. But there should be no throttling. It should be open internet. Those are all taken as given. What we want to see is the normal business practices which help the consumer, end consumer, which happens in every environment, even in e-commerce, even in malls. You're getting that sort of differential prices, which is good for the consumer. If you bar that, then you're making getting onto the internet even more of a barrier here in India. And that's what I said right at the beginning. I'd like to reiterate, I'm all for the consumer. The consumer has been given a short end of the stick in this.
You think that the consumer has been given a short shrift, but TRAI doesn't think so. Many of the people who have been fighting for this don't think so. So I guess the proof of the pudding is in the eating. We'll have to wait and see how this will work out in the coming weeks and months. And maybe after 2 years, as TRAI has indicated, when we look back and see how it has functioned, then we will know whether Mr. Ramachandran is right or people sitting here, the other people are right. We'll wait and watch for that. Thanks to all my guests. Please keep watching. We'll come back with another issue in the big picture same time tomorrow.